Okay, hi everyone. I think it's bang on 2 o'clock. So I think whilst the attendees number continues to rocket, we will get things underway. I wanted to say thanks to everyone for joining the webinar. So my name's Rich, for those of you who don't know me. I'm one of the directors of CareScribe, the assistive technology company that's running the event. For those who are requiring captions, there is a link in the chat that you can access, and it's also in the top left-hand corner of your screen. So it says live on custom live streaming service. If you click that, it will take you to captions. There you'll see a full transcript and the captions. And if you want to, you can customize it to your visual preference. And you can also open it in a small pop-up window. So you can layer it over anything else you want on your screen and resize it accordingly. We've also got our lovely BSL interpreters on the screen. So we've got Jill currently working away, and we've got Stephen as well. So they'll be spotlighted throughout the event. So thank you to both of you. And that just really leads me to say welcome to this, which is our first large online event for Captioned. We've been really overwhelmed with the numbers of people who've signed up. I think we've had over 600 registrants, which is just amazing given the sun's out, lockdown's easing, the pubs are open, and you've managed to sort of peel yourself away to come back to another Zoom session. So thank you for doing that. I mean, people have joined from all over the country and all over the world. So wherever you're tuning in from, welcome and thank you very much. So we've got some amazing speakers lined up, and we'll introduce them in turn as we go. And to our speakers, thanks very much for coming along. And we've got a whole team here to sort of help with any technical questions and things. So pop them in the chat to the panelists if you need any help. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, and if you missed it just at the start, we have got captions available, which we will share and have shared a link to in the chat. And also it's linked in the top left-hand corner of your screen. Click that, it will take you to a page where you can see the captions and transcripts. And if you click the open in pop-up button, it will open it in a small screen for you. As you probably noticed, I'm the only one speaking. Everybody else is muted. Just because we've got so many people on the line, we're going to have attendees muted for this, as I think it would become quite challenging otherwise. But as you already are doing, let's keep the chat going and the discussions going in the chat. And please ask any questions you have in either the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll be happy to answer them. We'll jump straight on them and answer them for you. So that's my very brief introduction. Basically, thanks so much for coming. Hopefully we've got a great event lined up for you. I'm going to hand you over to one of my colleagues, Ed, who is going to introduce some of our wonderful speakers. So I'll hand you over to Ed, and off we go.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, I just want to echo what Richard said. We really have been blown away by the interest and support in today's event. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We know your time is especially when the sun's out today. Well, it is here anyway. We have a really fantastic lineup of speakers, and to be honest, I'm just as excited to hear from them as you are. So I won't waste any more time. By the way, as you can see, I'm in my greenhouse, but without wasting any more time, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So first off, we're going to kick off proceedings with Andy Eachus, who is the digital skills trainer in assistive technology and accessibility at the University of Huddersfield. He has over 20 years of experience working in education, and he has an in-depth knowledge and understanding of the developments relating to educational technology, learning resources and training, and he keeps up to date with all of the recent trends in digital technologies and the potential impact of them on teaching and learning. Andy will be taking us through in his talk about what the University of Huddersfield are doing to improve access for students who are deaf or have hearing loss. So I will go ahead and pass over to Andy. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us today. And yeah, I look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Ed. I'll just share my screen. 25 years in education next year, and doesn't half make me feel really, really old. I'm hoping everyone can see that PowerPoint slide. Ed, if you can give me a thumbs up if you can see that.
Yeah, we've got that. We've got that. Cheers, Andy.
Wonderful. So just to introduce myself very briefly, my name's Andy Eachus, and as Ed said, I'm a digital skills trainer at the University of Huddersfield. And when I was asked to speak today at a conference for, improving access for HC students, it really resonated with me because I'm hearing impaired myself. I wear 2 hearing aids. So it's something that has been a barrier for me throughout my education, throughout my work. And it's something that I'm really passionate about when it comes to supporting students. And hearing aids and technology is a wonderful thing. This is why I'm so passionate about that as well, because I remember when I was a youngster at school many, many moons ago, hearing aids were analog, and my hearing loss is that some sounds I can hear perfectly, some sounds I can't hear very well at all, and some sounds are completely oblivious to me. And what the analog hearing aids did was amplified everything. So I remember distinctly sat in a physics room listening to the piano 3 blocks away in the music classroom. So I didn't embrace hearing aid technology until about 10 years ago when I found a digital hearing aid that really suited my purpose. So it's something that does make my life significantly more simple. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about some of the challenges that I've faced and some of the challenges that my students face at the University of Huddersfield and the things I do when working with staff to try and alleviate those. And I think one thing that's really worth noticing at the moment is because of the, made worse by the fact we're in a pandemic, is the simple fact that situational hearing loss is really important. So, the situation where we might have some noise occurring, so students are finding it much more difficult to learn online. And one example I can give you is I was in a very important meeting last week, and the person speaking was a long way away from the camera, so therefore difficult to lip read. He wasn't wearing a headset and the room was very echoey. And then as he started speaking, I have a window above my head and it started to hailstorm. And the only solution was to postpone the meeting. And there was a number of factors that impacted upon that. Number 1, he wasn't wearing a headset. Number 2, I couldn't see him to lip read. Number 3, situational noise. I don't have a window above my head when I'm on campus because I'm not in a loft room. So I think these really do impact and really stress why it's so important that we make as many changes as possible to support our students with hearing loss and those students who may have it situationally because of the environment around us. So the kind of guidance that I give to staff is based around face-to-face, is based around, just move that slide over because my notes aren't popping up. I'm sure I can work with that. Apologies. Okay. So it's based around face-to-face teaching, which, to be fair, hasn't happened too often, but is becoming much more common now, thankfully. And we expect to be fully face-to-face as much as we can be from September. Online, because for the last 12 months, that's been the way that we have delivered content to students. And also talking about creating accessible content. And I think there are the 3 facets that I'd like to touch on and talk about a little bit from my experience and from the experience of my students. So for me, face-to-face in a lecture, we really should be encouraging staff to wear a headset or at least a lapel mic. And one of the benefits of that is it improves the quality of auto captioning. Good quality audio means good quality captioning. So it's a brilliant trade-off, as well as being able to hear much, much better as a student in the room. Captions is another great example, and this may surprise people, but people do forget to turn them on. They forget they're there. A couple of years ago, I was in a workshop with a video, and at the end, I said to the person involved, it's a shame there were no captions. And I was met with, well, there were, but we forgot to turn them on. So sometimes the tiniest little changes can can really make a difference. Avoid using audio, or if we are going to use audio, why don't we upload it to a video platform like YouTube, then we can caption it. Repeating questions. And these are the kind of things that when I say to staff that are really important, often they kind of agree with me and they, oh, yeah, it's not something I've thought of, but it makes perfect sense. And I've been in situations where I've asked for questions to be repeated, but you know, I'm a trainer, I'm quite forthright, I'll speak my mind, but a lot of people won't. It's really important that we repeat questions. And the environment really takes some consideration. But what do I mean by environment? Well, recently I had a student that really struggled to hear because she was on campus, but because of COVID-19, they turned the air conditioning up. So the air conditioning was really loud. Also, the lecturer was wearing a mask. So by just simply moving her to a different place in the room and getting a clear mask for the tutor, that did make things a little bit better. So masks really impact at the moment for anybody with hearing impairment. Only 2 weeks I got shouted at as a pharmacist because I couldn't hear what she was saying, and it's quite upsetting. Think about open windows, traffic goes past. Think about body position. Try and face the audience as much as you can. Try not to turn away to the screen that you're presenting on when you're talking, and make sure you're well lit. Quite often people will say, let's turn off the light because we're going to be using the screen. Well, it's probably better to leave the light on so somebody can clearly see your facial expressions. And it's really important to record the lecture. Now, I do have a little poll. I don't know if Ed can just launch that for me. I'm sure Ed will let me know if he can.
Yeah, so that should be Chris, or did you want to pop a poll? Oh yeah, there we go.
Marvelous. So basically, I get asked quite a lot of questions in my role about hearing impairments. So it's just a quick poll. So basically, there's 5 statements. I think there's 5, might be 4. Basically, just tick whether you think those statements are true or false, and I'll just give you 30 seconds to do that, if that's okay.
Oh wow, loads of responses so far. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And then we'll post the results in a second. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, it's really great to see the people who realise that is false. I wear hearing aids myself, and as I said earlier, there's some sounds that I just cannot hear. So you can't make ultimate silence any louder. And yet I've experienced when people have noticed I'm wearing hearing aids, the demeanour changes towards me and they treat me as someone who can hear perfectly well. So yeah, that's very true. It can help. It can definitely help. But it certainly doesn't make your hearing 100%. How do I move on to the next question, Zed? The next result, sorry.
Hi, Andy. Just let us know, and we'll post the we can post the polls as they go. Okay. So we just launched.
I realise now it's 1 at 1. So yeah, just if maybe just every 10 seconds, just move it on, and I can.
Perfect. Will do.
An interesting fact here, that's at the factoid time, is that only 30% of speech can be seen on the lips. A lot of the reason for that is because a lot of the words like P and B are pretty much exactly the same mouth movement. And I didn't realise perhaps how much I relied on lip reading to some degree until everybody started wearing masks. So it kind of, I do realise that I often don't know the colour of somebody's eyes because I've learned over 50 odd years to watch the mouths. But it's quite true, not everybody can lip read, but it does really help many, many people. And again, this is something that I've experienced. If I say somebody I'm deaf, they tend to speak a lot louder. That can distort sound and actually make it worse and more difficult to hear. And also people will tend to exaggerate mouth movements and also talk much, much slowly. And it's actually really helpful just to speak normally. And another point on lip reading as well, really difficult with people mumble or have beards or very big moustaches. And lastly, yes, British Sign Language. British Sign Language is actually formed from its own grammatical structure and syntax. So it's not directly related to spoken English, but spoken English can be represented through finger spelling. So that was one of the things that I get asked a lot, because I often get asked, can somebody profoundly deaf rather use subtitles instead of a BSL interpreter? And that's the very reason why a BSL interpreter is the preferred option. Thank you very much for that indeed. Thank you. I shall carry on with the presentation if that's okay. So I've talked about face-to-face. So now I'm going to talk about online. And the thing that I find really interesting about online is there's less things to consider, which is kind of the flip side to what you'd expect. And that's because some of the considerations we should use on face-to-face, such as captions, fortunately are built into many of the online webinar tools. But it's still really important to use a headset for the same reason. It improves the quality of the captions. And we still need to consider the environment. But we need to consider the environment a little bit of a different way in this instance. Because we need to consider the fact that as any background noises, maybe the neighbor starts to trim his lawn, maybe somebody starts to do some DIY. That doesn't happen on campus. So by considering that environment, keeping the windows closed if need be, and wearing a headset, which has a noise cancelling mic and can also reduce echo, is really, really supportive for students. And lighting as well. I've been on conferences and meetings where people have had a window behind them because they want to use natural light on the screen, and I can understand that, but it puts the face into shadow and makes it really, really difficult to use that little bit of lip reading I do rely on when I can't see the face. So little considerations and things that are really simple to change are really, really important. And BSL. Now, I noticed we've got an interpreter today, and one of the great things about Zoom is you can see two screens at once, but that's not the same for Teams, which is what we use at Huddersfield. So we had a situation where the student was profoundly deaf, wanted to use a British Sign Language interpreter, but when they were on screen, they were really small. And so how did we get around that? Well, the easiest way was to log in once on the app and log in once on the browser and have the two screens side by side. And we actually created a number of crib sheets around this, which have proven really useful, not just to interpreters, but to the students themselves. And if anybody would like a copy of those, because they cover how to do it on one screen, how to do it on two screens, or indeed how to do it on two devices. So if anybody's having an issue with Teams and British Sign Language interpreters, I'm more than happy to share that with you, because I think it's quite a useful resource. And then lastly, I'd like to talk about creating accessible videos. And it's not a surprise that a lot of the things that apply to presenting online come across in creating video as well. So wearing a headset is really, really important. Also be conscious about color and contrast. If things on the screen are difficult to read for aesthetic reasons, that needs to be rectified. Timing, when text is on the screen, make sure you've got plenty of time to read it. And my recommendation is read it twice before that screen moves on. And ensure the accuracy of captions, and preferably configurable. Some of our hearing impaired students, in fact, some students who just want to use subtitles, might have visual stress, Ehlers syndrome, dyslexia, or maybe visually impaired. So the ability to make those captions bigger, to choose their own colors is really, really important. And I've deliberately left background noise to last, because this is one of my least favorite things about videos. And I think because I hear background noises as much as I hear any noises, and hearing aids are not particularly effective at being able to differentiate between the two. So often when music, which is nice, is a similar volume to speech, it makes speech really difficult to hear. So just taking that background noise to a very, very, very low level and ensure that the focus is purely on the speech will really help hearing impaired users get the most out of your videos and engage with them. And I think that's really everything. I've touched on the three things I wanted to touch at, which is creating accessible content, which is not just useful for hearing impaired students, it's useful for absolutely everybody. And don't forget, sometimes students may have a hearing impairment because it's situational. They may have forgotten their headphones, or they might be in a situation where they can't have the volume up on their mobile device. So captions are really, really useful. So that's all from me. I hope that wasn't too brief. I do hope there's an opportunity to take some questions at the end. And on that note, thank you very, very much for your time today. And I will pass you back to, I'm going to guess it, Ed.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy. There's a couple of questions that you could briefly touch on, and that we've had in the Q&A part and stuff, is first off, what are your thoughts about the term hearing impaired? Like, is that something that you know, like obviously we go with hearing loss and deafness. What are your thoughts about the term hearing impaired? Is that something that is something that we try not to use, for example?
Personally, it's a phrase I refer to myself as hearing impaired because it gives people the indication that my hearing isn't fully functional, shall we say. I guess other people would prefer to phrase it differently, but it's not I've nothing I've ever had a problem with, and I do refer to myself that way. And I think it's probably the easiest way of making people understand they are going to have to make some adjustments if they're going to engage with me fully, and I'm going to understand what they're saying.
Also, you mentioned, Andy, about headsets and stuff. Is there a specific headset that you do recommend, or is it just any kind of headset that's going to make it a little bit easier for people to want to get the best quality?
There's no particular make, but an interesting point around headsets that I'll make, if that's okay, is that my headset benefits the people I'm talking to, but it doesn't benefit me. And that's because my hearing aids don't work with the headset. So ideally, all my audio would come through my hearing aids. My phone comes through my hearing aids, but my computer doesn't. Now, I believe the latest technology in hearing aids, you can have multiple devices. So that sounds brilliant. So, you know, in the future, I'll be able to stream my laptop, the television, my phone, and that would be a perfect future. So that's just one point worth considering about a headset. A headset doesn't necessarily help the user, but it does, you wearing one does help indirectly. Quite often, from my perspective, some headsets come with just one earpiece and then a plastic piece.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work for me because that means the outside sounds get in the non-covered ear. So I've got a battle between what the surrounding sounds and direct sounds. So for me, in my personal opinion, to have two headphones and a noise reducing microphone is really, really useful.
That's perfect.
No particular make.
Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate that insight and your talk. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really interesting to hear from you, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if anybody does have any questions for Andy, obviously we have a link to to Andy's LinkedIn and stuff. If you do want to get in touch with Andy personally, then I'm sure he'll be welcome to that. Or if not, you can say so, Andy.
No, that's absolutely fine. And the offer of those crib sheets is there because that was a situation we came across that was really preventing that student getting the most out of his online lectures. And I received an email after we provided the solution, and he was great, really, really thankful, and really appreciative of the change we'd made. It just made his life easier. So they're available if anybody wants them. And of course, if anybody wants to tap in for any help or advice, I'm more than happy to provide that, if I know the answers, of course.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. Like from all of us here at CareScribe, thank you so much for joining us and yeah, giving us all of your insights and stuff. We really, really do appreciate it. So thank you so much for that, Andy. Yeah, we'll hope you have a lovely rest of the day, or if you're joining for the rest, I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
I'm definitely staying around. Thanks very much, Ed.